Welcome back. On Thursday, Andrew Gillum took his campaign bus tour that included South Dade, where he grew up, and ended at high school football game in North Dade. There was symbolism to the trip that did not escape Gillum or those following the campaign. And speaking to him aboard his bus, it's where we started. So today you went through, you were down in South Dade where you grew up. You end the day up here at Trask Powell with young African high school kids. Is there an emotional element to a day like this?
I actually started the day in Key West and had an amazing, group of folks come out. You may or may not recall, because a lot of people weren't paying attention during the primary in this regard, but I ended my campaign literally starting in Richmond Heights, where I grew up, and making my way all the way back to Tallahassee. This is an important trek for me. I like to be emotionally connected to what it is that I'm doing, and I don't think that I've been more emotionally connected than when I've been in this area, when I literally walk down streets that I remember walking down as a boy, passing the barbershop where I used to sweep up hair for Mr. Bob and get paid $3 a week. These are the kind of experiences that also keep you connected to why it is that you're doing this, right? It's easy in Tallahassee to get disconnected from what this is all about. For me, being in this area, being home, being part of a place that shapes so much of who I am, as I near the end of this part of the journey, is important and significant.
What do you think?
It's grounding.
So you were just out of a high school football game. What does it mean for them, you think, to see you running for governor? Yeah. Very good chance of being the next governor, the first African-American. Yeah. Do you get the symbolism of that? Do you get the weight of that?
I try not to, and I'm going to be honest with you. It's very, very, very hard to try to carry the weight of history at the time that the stakes are so high for what is happening here. But I'll tell you, in all sincerity, the point isn't lost on me that as I see these young athletes out here and I'm passing them and dapping them up and giving them high fives and encouraging them, that maybe in the recesses of their mind, they're thinking maybe that could be me as well, right? That means something to me. And then I quickly snap back into the fact that I got 4 days left on this trail.
All right, so let's talk about this campaign. When you decided to run for governor, is this the campaign? Is this the tone of a campaign that you thought you'd be running?
No, I mean, I knew that it would get rough on the other side. I knew that in the Democratic primary, by and large, we were negotiating differences. I mean, there were not large, major traps between us. In the Republican side, I saw what was happening a little bit during the Republican primary, and so I had a sense of what we might get from Mr. DeSantis. I am not sure that I forecasted it would get so quickly, so early in the race, so deep into the gutter. And frankly, it's kind of continued, throughout. We have not had, and I regret this for the voters of the state of Florida, I'm not sure that we've had a full vetting of the issues on where he stands or where I stand. In my rallies, when we're moving around the state, I talk about the things I believe, and I've not shrinked from stating very plainly where I am on the issues. But in our debates, every opportunity Mr. DeSantis was given to say what he believed in, what his North Star was for the future of the state, we never had an opportunity to really exchange on that. There was a lot of name calling, a lot of innuendo, a lot of one-lining, and I'm complicit in the one-lining myself, but we didn't get as deep as I would have liked to.
I want to talk about, I know you didn't see the rally last night. I know you were campaigning, trick-or-treating rather, with your kids. We're taping this the day after. Yeah. But you've heard, obviously, by now that they were chanting, "Lock him up."
Yeah, I heard it in an interview this morning. It was my first time.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I think it's sad and unfortunate. I think the President of the United States, in the same week that they're laying to rest 11 individuals, and families are grieving, not just in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but across the country, and I would say across the world, due to that very violent anti-Semitic act that snuffed out the lives of 11 people. The same week coming off of where bombs were sent into the homes of prominent Democrats around the country, that the President of the United States, instead of showing himself to be a uniter and helping to give the country lift in this moment, he's gone all the way into the gutter. Now, I can't say I have different expectations for him. I mean, he's shown us repeatedly who he is, and I believe him. Mr. DeSantis seems, intent on trying to impress the president, and so he's going right behind him. I will tell you this, I think that this is contributing to the degradation of our dialogue. This is contributing to many of the reasons why so many people check out of politics. They're not sure what's real and what isn't. I don't have the luxury or the resourcing to get around and be able to individually meet everybody. So I have to imagine that some people under the sound of that chant may have assumed that, you know, maybe there's something wrong with this guy.
Well, that takes me perfectly into the question I want to have, which is the day after the election.
Yeah.
Day after the election, either you're going to be the governor-elect or Ron DeSantis is going to be the governor-elect. And you're going to have a very divided state. If you're the governor, there are going to be a large part of this community in the state of Florida that's going to think that you're a criminal, you're a crook, you're a thief, you're a cop hater. How do you bring the state together? Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, I will in the same way that I've campaigned. I mean, I could have very easily camped out in the bottom 3 counties of this state, maybe Duval and maybe a little bit across the I-4 corridor, and said, we're basically going to talk to the base and the base alone. That's not what we've done. Yesterday I was in Pensacola. I was in Monroe County earlier. Earlier this week we were in Putnam, Clay, St. Johns County. We were in Charlotte County a couple of days ago. We're going to areas where Democrats have not gone, and if they've gone, they certainly haven't gone as the nominees and in the final closing days of the argument. So how do you bring them
together after the election?
Well, I have to tell you, I think I would like for these folks to hear me, to get to know me, to understand what my values are. I want them to know that I come from working class parents who did everything they could to make a way for me, that my lived experience probably better reflects theirs than anybody else running, and that I want to be their governor too. That's why I'm going to many of these areas. It's not because I suffer illusions that I'm going to win these deep red counties. I don't think I'm going to win them necessarily.
Did you make a mistake in how you handled getting things out about the FBI investigation? In other words, could you have done this earlier in the process and tried to just get it all out because now you're paying for it later?
Well, I'll tell you, I will submit that I've tried to be honest and forthright in every opportunity and in every venue I've been given. If I had it to do again, are there things I would do differently? Sure. I mean, I would never want to allow it to seep into people's perception of me that I'm somehow on the take or am a crook or have done something illegal or untoward. I tried very early on to be as open as I possibly could, and I don't get to control all the dynamics of this thing. I would have preferred the FBI come out and say exactly what it is that they were doing. I have a clear sense of it, but everybody else doesn't, and so they have to trust that I'm being honest and leveling with them. And so, you know, as I've told folks, I've served for 15 years by doing right, not by doing wrong. My community has elected and re-elected me on multiple occasions, including winning my community in the primary election, because they trust me and they trust my judgment and they trust that my intentions are never going to be selfish or self-motivating or in any way to obfuscate the rule of law or anything like that. And I hope that the people of the state of Florida will come to know that about me soon and sooner as they get to know me.
2 last final questions. I want to ask the other side of the question I asked about election the day after the election. Yeah. Let's say Ron DeSantis is governor-elect. Yeah. What role do you think you have at that moment to sort of help with that transition, to help bring your supporters to believe that, whether or not, because there are going to be a lot of people in the state who will believe he's a racist, he's a bigot in his own sort of way, he's a Trump acolyte. How do you bring the state together? What is your responsibility?
Well, I mean, first I'll say I don't believe Ron DeSantis is going to be the next governor. But to follow your example all the way through, I'm going to perform as I have up to this point. I believe in this state. I love this state. This is my state as well. And I want people to have their needs met in the state of Florida. And so whatever I can do to advocate toward that end, I'm going to do. And if that means on occasion working with the other side, my opponents, politically to get that done, I'm open for it. In fact, if we win this race, and moreover when we win, I'm going to have to do that probably quicker than not. Sitting down with leadership, having the conversation and trying to figure out how we actually get things done. People don't want us to be up there bickering over nothing. They want us up there trying to make lives better for them and for their families. What's at stake in this election, and what can you really accomplish given the fact that you are going to have a Republican House? We can talk about, well, we don't know what it's going to look like, but you're going to have a Republican House. Jose Oliva from this area is going to be the next speaker. The Senate is probably going to also be in the hands of the Republicans.
What do you do? How do you work with them? And what's at stake here?
Yeah, well, I'm not ready to see the Senate. And I think this House situation is largely a byproduct of members choosing their voters rather than voters choosing their members. And it's one of the reasons why redistricting is at stake in this election. But I actually think that
because the census will define whoever is governor will oversee the redistricting process.
Absolutely, why they sign into law or will veto the next set of redistricting maps. But beyond which candidate wins or loses, we really are fighting for kind of our worldview. I mean, is the politics of division and derision and hatred and divisiveness going to prevail or not? I have not run that kind of campaign. We've tried to talk to everybody and been open to that. I'm going to be open to working with Republicans, and I do believe that there are some issues under which we can find some common ground. We saw under the Republican leadership advancements on criminal justice reform under their control. We saw the Republican Senate under Republican leadership vote 39-1 to advance Medicare for Medicaid expansion. We've seen on a range of issues where folks have been able to cross over aisles, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to see a little bit more of that, knowing that we're going to have to negotiate with a governor who can either sign into law or veto the next set of redistricting maps and the budget, which obviously has to be signed.
And the Supreme Court.
Well, there are 3 justices on the courts and appointments below that. I mean, look, there's a lot of work to be done, and I'll tell you, I'm going to go in with a spirit of how can we work together? What do you need? What is a priority for me? And how do we work together so that everybody gets to take something home?